Liam stepped out of the steaming shower, his damp hair sticking to his forehead. As he wrapped a towel around his waist, the scent of cedar and mint clung to his skin, mingling with the cool November air slipping through the window of his small apartment. His muscles worked from the long day he'd spent at their workshop, where he was fine-tuning a prototype for a robotics competition. He rubbed his hair with another towel as he walked to his room, glancing at the reflection in the mirror on the closet door. A mix of exhaustion and excitement danced in his eyes. His career was finally gaining momentum, but the cost was clear: the late nights there, self-imposed solitude, and the lingering weight of something he couldn't quite name. Emma, who was the girlfriend of Liam's father, was in the living room, sitting cross-legged on his old couch, with her laptop propped on a cushion. She'd been visiting more often, ostensibly to help Liam organize his thoughts for his project. At 28, her steady presence was a balm to Liam's whirlwind energy. She was quiet but not shy, confident but not overbearing, a kind of balance that drew him to her in ways he couldn't fully articulate. "Hey," she called out, her voice lilting. "I ordered some Thai, should be here in 20 minutes." "Perfect," he replied, pulling a shirt over his head. He hesitated, looking at her from the doorway. The soft lamp light cast a golden glow over her face, watching in her dark eyes and illuminating the faint curve of her smile. For a moment he felt an almost magnetic pull. He shook it off, walking over to the couch and sitting down next to her. Their knees brushing, that subtle contact made his heart thud, a reaction he'd been trying to ignore for weeks. Emma seemed to feel it too. She stiffened slightly before relaxing. "Again, you look exhausted," she said, tilting her head toward him. Her hand instinctively moved to touch his shoulder, but she stopped halfway and let it fall. "You really need to take breaks." "I'm fine," he replied, though his voice betrayed a slight crack. She raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. Their conversations always hovered in this inert space, comfortable, close, yet somehow never crossing their invisible line that Liam felt so keenly. But tonight something felt different. The air between them was heavier, charged. When the food arrived, they ate in easy silence, the clink of chopsticks and the warmth of curry filling the gaps. But when the dishes were pushed aside and they sat back on the couch, their energy shifted again. Liam leaned forward, elbows on his knees, while Emma tucked her feet beneath her, watching him with a soft, searching expression. "You're too hard on yourself," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "You've got so much ahead of you, but it's okay to let yourself be here too." Liam looked at her, startled by the weight of her words. She wasn't just talking about the project anymore. He felt the distance between them like a taut string waiting to snap. "I don't know how to do that," he admitted, his voice low. Emma leaned in slightly, her hand resting on the couch. Between them, their faces were so close. Now he could see the faint freckles on her nose, the curve of her lips as they parted. His breathing quickened, her hand slid closer, brushing against his. He didn't pull away this time. "Maybe you don't have to know," she whispered. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and before either of them could think better of it, Liam closed their gap. His lips found hers in a kiss that was slow, searching and tender. Her hand slid up to his neck, her fingers tangling in his damp hair as he pulled her closer. Time seemed to stop. The room faded away when they finally broke apart. Their foreheads rested together, and their silence between them was louder than their pounding of their hearts. "I've wanted to do that for so long," Liam confessed, his voice barely above a breath. Emma smiled, a little dazed, her thumb brushing against his jawline. "Me too," she replied, but as the moment settled, a shadow crossed Liam's face. He pulled back slightly, his hand falling away from her waist. "Emma, he hesitated, his words catching in his throat. "I can't, I don't think I can do this right now." Her smile faltered, confusion giving way to understanding. "Because of your work?" she asked softly. He nodded, guilt flashing in his eyes. "It's not fair to you. My head's so full of everything else. I don't want to start something I can't give you my whole self. In Emma searched his face, her own heart tightening. You're allowed to have more than one thing, Liam, but if this is what you need, I understand. The warmth of their kiss lingered as they sat in silence, neither moving. The space between them so briefly bridged returned, but now it felt different. Not a wall but a pause, a moment of clarity, even if it hurt. Thank you, he said finally, his voice heavy with emotion. Emma smiled again, softer this time, and stood. I should go. As she reached the door she turned back, her eyes meeting his. When you're ready, you know where to find me. And then she was gone, leaving behind the scent of jasmine and the memory of a kiss that might have been a beginning or an end. As the door clicked shut, Liam's chest tightened. He sat frozen, replaying the kiss, her words, and the quiet sound of her footsteps fading down their hallway. The silence in the apartment was unbearable now, punctuated only by their hum of the fridge and the faint creak of the old floorboards beneath him. He stood abruptly, pacing the room as his thoughts spiraled. What if he had just let something extraordinary slip away? The ache in his chest wasn't just guilt, it was regret, a gnawing realization that his need for control might have cost him their one thing that had truly made him feel alive. In months, without thinking, he grabbed his phone and texted her. Emma. Wait, no response. His heart pounded as he grabbed his jacket and ran down the stairs, two at a time, flinging open the building's front door into the cold night air. She wasn't there. The street lights cast long shadows on the empty pavement. The city's distant sounds muffled under the weight of his panic. He turned back inside, feeling foolish and defeated, but as he reached his apartment he found her sitting on the floor just outside his door, her coat wrapped tightly around her and her head resting against the wall. She looked up, startled, her eyes wide and vulnerable. I thought you were done, she said softly, standing as he approached. Liam didn't answer her. He crossed the space between them in two strides, cupping her face and kissing her with a raw, desperate intensity. This wasn't like before. Tentative and unsure, it was fire and certainty, a collision of all their emotions he tried to suppress. When they finally pulled apart, their breaths mingling in the still air, he whispered, I don't want to lose you, I'll figure it out, just don't go. Emma's reply was a quiet nod, her hand slipping into his as they stepped inside together.